How goes it? This is Why So Religious here. Appreciate you listening. Um, anybody, sorry about that. Anybody who is familiar with my other channel knows that I don't really shy away from topics. I'll talk about myself. Um, I'll talk about various religions. I've talked politics when the questions have arisen. But one thing I don't like to do is just repeat the same old, same old. It gets boring, right? I like to try to come at angles that are different or maybe not brought up. Like, in my opinion, my greatest achievement, as far as, let's say, Islam going, is that Allah says, sight, vision leaves the eye, travels, and then comes back to the eye. And I've never heard a video address this. No apologetics, no nothing. So those are the type of things that I like to cover, or how the other day I talked about religious dissonance or religious privilege. And so today what I'm going to talk about is something that is very common, right? But I want to cover it at a different angle. So most people know about, in Islam, the satanic verses, as they call them. And, this is documented in Al-Tabari. I could bring it up on the screen if necessary. It's not an issue to me to cite my sources whenever people want them. I can do that. It's never gonna hinder me. Whenever. Sorry. I saw we had somebody watching, so I wanted to see if there was going to be any comments. But like I was saying, everybody covers the satanic verses. It's old news at this point, right? But what the difference would be is Islamic responses, right? Because the normal pushback is, well, if this part of the Quran was allegedly taken over, right, by the devil, by Lucifer, Shaitan, instead of Allah, then why isn't the rest of the Quran considered like that, possibly? And that's the normal pushback, I guess you would say. Oh, hey, Sir Macintosh. If you want on, just let me know, and I'll put the link in for you, buddy. You can get on, and we can discuss this together. But the normal pushback, it always comes to that type concept, right? Like, if one part of it is believed historically by the scholars inside of their most authentic, authoritative text, right, that one part was for sure alleged to be part of the Quran, but it was really just the devil, then how can you trust the rest of what Muhammad said? Well, that's not the angle that I went with today in a discussion with a Muslim. And I'll bring up my way, the angle, I guess you would say, that I went with this debate, and I still haven't heard from him. It's kind of funny because he loves to respond quite a bit, rather fast. I'm not saying that he's not an intelligent person or anything, but sometimes you can tell he's just writing stuff. So so that he can write back, right? He just doesn't want to be this type of person that doesn't have a response in general. Okay, yeah, well, you're always welcome to come on, Sir Macintosh, never a problem. All right, so but that topic did get brought up, right? The satanic verses. And I decided to go with a little bit different of an angle on it and see what the actual answer would be. I'm trying to, my computer's been a little sluggish today for some reason. I'm trying to get the screen share up so everybody can't say, "Oh, he's hiding his words." You know, he's not wanting to show us what's really going on here. Okay, screen share. For some reason, the button's not wanting to work. Every other button is working. Cameraman, control room, more apps. But nope, it's not wanting to work. All right. I apologize for that. I don't know what's going on with that. Just having a little trouble with Google's Hangouts there. So this is what got brought up, right? A Rob Speaker's Corner posted a video for people to watch. It's Satanic versus Christian Prince versus Farhad in the debate. Okay. And I typed just another time a Muslim gets schooled and everybody agrees except Muslims. Because that's just how it is, right? If it's a Christian and a Muslim debating, the Christians always side with the Christians and the Muslims always side with the Muslims. And if it's a Quranist Muslim only with Hadith Muslim, it's going to be the Quranist only Muslims with the Quranist only Muslims and the Hadith Muslims with the Mohammedans. And, you know, just typical stuff like that, you know. But so then Aziz decides to put, how do we measure trustworthiness? Atheists shouldn't be considered with trustworthiness of Allah's message. Atheists have a subjective worldview. Now, how Islam wouldn't be a subjective worldview is kind of beyond me, but we'll continue on. I put, why should Muhammad be trusted when Satan casts the words in his mouth? And this was the typical debate. You know, this is what most people say. So that's the reason I wrote it, just to see where the conversation would go. Yes, indeed. Why so religious? Rob put, if Satan managed to confuse Muhammad, how can anyone be sure of anything else Muhammad said wasn't influenced by Satan? Then Aziz put, this is a stupid argument. I love how it's just like, that's just stupid. That makes no sense. Oh, hello, academic. But that's just or objective truth, my brother. Yeah, without a doubt, you know, because the Quran is a sign. You know, that's what it is. Could you imagine how big the Quran sign would have to be if it was like what we consider signs, like stop signs and road signs? You know, like how big that won't, even though the Quran is a pretty short book by religious comparison, it's just the concept of Allah's making it a sign, how big it would have to be, how continuous. All right. So back on, Aziz says, this is stupid argument. This stupid argument. And you guys are confusing Salam Kufar's fictional book with history. The ayah is like no more than 8 words long. You guys need better understand man's nature. And I put, it is in the most official tafsir, which it is. And if my screen share was showing, it was working, I'd be able to show you, you know, that it's in Tabari, which is the most official. Okay. Even the concept of Sahih al-Bukhari gets references from Tabari, which in turn gets references from Ibn Ashaq, right? And that's where a lot of Muslims try to break this off at, saying, well, Ibn Ashaq wasn't trusted by Malik. Well, so what? You know? Where in the Quran does it say, "Oh well," or in the Hadith even it says, "If Malik does not trust you or like you, your word is never taken as true." It doesn't. Okay, so then Fruitful decides to chime in. He says, "Things harm only by the permission of God." And I put, that doesn't answer or address the question and point. So Allah is causing Muslims to kill other Muslims. Got it. That was just like a little stab. You know, I hate to get off topic on that one, but that was just a little stab. Fruitful responds, "Nothing happens except by Allah's determining will, the good and the bad things." Now, I didn't respond with this, but it makes me wonder. So, how can they be bad things if Allah wills them? So you're saying that Allah wants bad things to happen, right? So Allah doesn't always want good things to happen. He also wants bad things to happen. That's the God you worship. You know, you worship a God that you want. Hello, pull-ups. You worship a God that you want, right? To control good and bad things, and it's just determining on what he wants, right? Well, that means that Allah knows the difference between good and bad, right? If he controls what you consider good and bad, then that means he understands the difference of what's good and bad, and he still allows it to happen. He still controls that it happen. He still wants us to want it to happen. So where is Allah's morality? If you know, I've spoken plenty of times that I don't believe in morality, but if you look at it from a religious standpoint, you're agreeing that Allah knows what morality is, allegedly, but he does not ascribe to it. He doesn't have to rule by morality. And when you do that, it's really a conundrum, right? Because if your God is perfect, all powerful, all knowing, but he doesn't have to follow any rules about morality, then you're leaving it open ended to what could actually be considered moral or immoral. Because if God is willing to allow it all and God controls it all, then in some way he thinks that the bad things are moral too, right? That would be the way that it comes back around. Okay, we'll continue on here. I didn't write that, but that was something that when I was at work, I started thinking about. So I wrote, this is where I was getting with the satanic verses, and the angle that I wanted to come at with. Have you ever lied or said something untrue about the Quran or Allah? Now, Aziz responded this time, but 4 question marks, and then he wrote, "We don't need to lie. What do we benefit from lying?" And I wrote, "Ever said something untrue about Allah or his Quran?" Now, notice he only focused on the lying part. That's the reason I put lied or said something untrue, because, a lot of people, they say things that uh, aren't true, but they're not lying. The people, the people. This is what people say about, let's say, Trump, for example. They're like, he lies, he lies, he lies, and then you can go on to like Timcast, which is a YouTuber. I like him. He's left wing, but he's like moderate left or whatever. And he explains it like this. He says, "I don't think Trump thinks he's lying. He thinks what he's saying is true, which means he's just saying something untrue, but it's not a lie." And that's why he did not want to answer that part. He just wanted to focus on the lying part, right? Because if I said that, if he agreed that Muhammad said something untrue about Allah's words in the Quran, then he would have to hold Muhammad accountable. Right. But if he said that he ever said something untrue about the Quran, he could just admit later on that he was wrong about it. Right. But if he said that he lied about it, then that would be intentional. Saying something untrue isn't necessarily intentional, but lying is intentional. So there's the separation of the question that I asked. And so then I continued with, I don't think you want to, because this is like 2 hours after he has not responded, and he responds rather quickly most of the time. I don't think you want to answer, because your most authentic, authoritative sources and scholars all agree that Muhammad said something untrue about Allah's Quran. And this would be the satanic verses where uh, some stories, some narrations have it as Muhammad says that Alat, Amat, and the third one, I'm sorry. I can't really remember right now at the top of my head. Um, that these are cranes that send prayers up to Allah, and some say that it was daughters of Allah. You know, but they all agree that this happened. They're just disagreeing with the words used. And I wouldn't be surprised with that, because as we've covered on here, even the very beginning of Muhammad's alleged revelations, Al-Aqara, I think it is. It's been a while since I looked at it. It can mean either to recite or to write. So you don't really know if Muhammad was told to write or to recite, because it's the same word. Al-Qura'un, something like that. And so I could understand why something like crane or dollars or some shit like that is getting confused amongst these people. But then I continue with this one. And this is the theological debate. This also brings into question when it said in the Quran that is Muhammad made something up and it wasn't from Allah, Allah would kill him. If Muhammad said that Allah has 3 daughters / cranes, but Allah didn't tell him to say it, the devil did, and Allah wills and controls all actions and thoughts, how could Muhammad ever be held accountable for what he said, whether it be true or untrue? And that may take some Al-Iqra. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Pull-Ups. It's been a while since I've seen that. This reminds me of Hadith. It might be better to show this exchange on screen. Yes, Pull-Ups, before you got here, I tried to do a screen share, but for some reason, my screen share is not working today. I'm pushing the button. There we go. It just now popped up. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. I actually had to go into, I was telling people, I was saying, yeah, I'm trying to push my button. It's not wanting to work. All the other buttons were working, but that one wasn't wanting to pop up. I even said my computer is maybe acting a little sluggish. So there we go. But okay, so here we go. Because, you know, I'm not Christian Prince, but just like him, I'm not afraid to show my conversations. I'm not afraid to show my sources. None of that. It's not a problem. And so, as I said right here, this brings on the theological debate, right? This also brings into question when it, and I was at work, y'all. So I had food all over my hands. So some of the words didn't come out. It didn't come out grammatically correct. This also brings into question when it said, meant to say in the Quran, that is Muhammad made something up and it wasn't from Allah, Allah would kill him. If Allah said that, if Muhammad said that Allah has 3 daughters or cranes, but Allah didn't tell him to say it, the devil did, and Allah wills and controls all actions and thoughts, how could Muhammad ever be held accountable for what he said, whether it be true or untrue, right? So this comes into what I started thinking about at work. I started thinking about this as a subhanallah. So I started thinking about this, and like, because 2 days a week when I at my job, I pretty much don't have to talk to anybody. It's just by myself. I make food and stuff, and nobody comes over and makes me do other tasks. So I just sit there, and sometimes I think of ideas for shows and things like that. So I was sitting here thinking, so Muhammad says something untrue about the Quran because it came from Shaitan, right? And then Allah gives the correct verse. Here's a question. Would Allah ever have gave that verse if it wasn't for Lucifer starting it? And that's a unique question that I've never heard posed to Muslims, because every other verse, right, is given with this context. If you follow hadith, even if you don't follow hadith, that Allah sends down Gabriel with the words to tell Muhammad, right, that are Allah's words. But this verse wouldn't be here without the backstory of Lucifer saying something first, right? So Allah actually had to create a verse because Lucifer created the verse that wasn't inside the Quran. Now, of course, a Muslim apologetics will say, oh, well, the Quran's up in paradise, has been there ever since the very beginning of creation. It's perfect. It's unchanging. But it still leads up the question that did Allah know that he would have to put this verse inside the Quran because Lucifer, the Shaitan, would come in and give an incorrect verse. Hello, Abdiji. How you doing, buddy? Y'all just let me know in the comments if you understand what I'm talking about, because if y'all follow me a good bit, you know that my live streams, I'm not, a lot of times this stuff is just things that I think of off the top of my head, but they're not like my videos. I don't write down my videos, but I have enough time to say what I want to say, edit, and then go through it again. And sometimes I don't convey on my live streams appropriately exactly what it is that I'm trying to push out. Yeah, why so religious? In a way, those words were in response to Satan. Yes, there you go. Yes, throwing words in Muhammad's mouth. And then Abidi, I'm good, buddy. We're just sitting here talking about the satanic verses, and I'll be honest, satanic verses conversations are just like fucking apostasy inside of Islam debate, and blasphemy laws is boring to me because everybody talks about it. It's the same old shit. But what I'm trying to do is bring up a different angle of the conversation here. And that's one of the things I thought about, was how even before Allah wrote the Quran, I guess, inside of heaven, or had it created, however you want to think about it, he had to have known that Lucifer would beat him to a verse, right? That in theory, the reason that verse exists is because Lucifer created a statement that people believed was part of the Quran, and then Allah had to respond to that. Why so religious? Not only that there are verses where Allah just quotes some jinns verbatim, and those are verses in the Quran. Yes. That's actually what is it? The jinn, I think, is the surah, and it's how some jinn started listening to Muhammad, right? And they started believing inside of they started believing in Allah and stuff. Now, here's the thing. The jinn were in paradise, right? With Allah. When he, and if the Quran is inside as a preserved slate, give me 1 second, Abdiji, and you can ask which verse that you're asking for, because we've covered a couple of verses that we're talking about. So you let me know which verse you're wanting to know about, and I'll bring it up on screen for you. But so jinn were already inside of paradise. The Quran was inside of paradise. So why didn't the jinn already know about it? And isn't that kind of weird? Why? Now there are hadiths and such that jinn procreate, you know, and so you could say, oh well, they're just baby jinn. They were the ones never inside of paradise. Right? Just little baby jinns. Why so religious is so crazy. They were listening to the Quran and the verse in the Quran. Right, right. Yes, there is the now Abdiji. I'm just gonna call you Ab for now on. I don't want to have to worry about it, but according to the Quran, and Christian Prince brought this up against Go Live Media. Pull up Sir Macintosh. I don't know if y'all saw that video, but it was embarrassing. Go Live Media actually thought he could call up and school Christian Prince. And here's the thing about that. Christian Prince brought up a good point. Inside the Quran, Lucifer, Shaitan, was the only jinn that was cast out of paradise. There was 3 people cast out of paradise, right? It doesn't mention that there was angels. It doesn't mention that there was any jinn that was cast out with Satan, with Lucifer, with Shaitan. It just mentions Adam, Eve, and Shaitan. So this concept that there's jinn on earth also isn't in the Quran. That comes from the hadiths and the tafsirs. And when you look at the Quran, and and you can also inside the Quran also it says that that Allah throws missiles, the shooting stars in the sky, at jinn trying to escape into paradise. So okay, the only jinn mentioned in the Quran of being cast out is one, but yet somehow later on you got jinn on earth listening to Muhammad speak the Quran, and then they become Muslim, right? They become Muslim. But then you also have some who are trying to get back into paradise. Now, once again, it was never said that they were kicked out. It only says that one was kicked out. So why are all these other jinn having to pay the price because of one jinn? That makes no sense. They can't get through the first heaven. Well, let's see here. Actually, Earth is not the first heaven, right? I'll have to get back to you on that. This is not the first of the 7 layers, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to get back to you on that because I just have to double check that. Allah mentioned in the Quran that he made the jinn and humans only for them to worship him. Because there are, but I just want to say this about the, so you agree that the earth is flat, Ab, right? Because you said the first heaven. So if there's multiple heavens, they have to be in like a dome shape, right? The earth has to be flat, because if you're saying the first heaven, then with our telescopes and stuff, we should be able to look right above us. Okay, because the Quran does say that that they are in layers. That's the actual wording used, in layers. One above the other would be a layer. So you're a flat earther then, right? Because most Quranists are flat earthers if they're Quranists. Yes, it would. It's uh, how we would say a geosphere. But so what I'm getting at here, so are you a Muslim, Ab? Because I can get you on the show and we can talk. It's totally fine. I'd love to have a new guest. You know, on my other channel, you can ask pull ups and you can ask Sir Macintosh. You know, I always let people on. I never hesitate. They want on, totally fine. You know, it's not really egg shaped. It's more pear shaped because the top sides are more flat, the North and South Pole, which causes the outside to become projecting more than what would be considered egg shape. So there's the link in the chat. You know, if y'all want to join, go ahead and join. Whoever. Okay. So to get back about the jinn, because Allah mentioned it in the Quran that He made the jinn and humans only for them to worship Him. Okay. So, but the Quran only mentions one jinn that doesn't worship Allah, right? Can you? And then it's not until later in the Quran, or actually, if you want to think of it chronologically, or if you want to think of it chronologically, if you follow Hadith, I'm pretty sure the jinn verse came before most explanations, because I think I've done a video on this. There's 4 times in the Quran that Muhammad talks about the Adam and Eve and Shaitan being thrown from paradise, right? And in those 4 times, 2 times, Muhammad calls Shaitan a jinn, and 2 times he says, and this is exactly what it says. He says in the Quran, he says Allah tells the angels to bow to Adam, but the Shaitan, Lucifer, didn't. Right. So 2 times it says that it puts together grammatically angels and Lucifer. And then 2 different times it says that after he told the angels to prostrate, but Lucifer didn't, he says, but Lucifer was of the jinn. So if you look at it chronologically, it looks like Muhammad had to come back and recover what he had to say. Now, what you're talking about here, what you just said, jinn have free will as well as humans. I'd love for you to come on here and explain to me how you have free will. So if Allah, and this is the question, Allah knows all things before they ever happen. And I actually started thinking about this the other day. My actions are eternal, right? Because Allah knows every... Okay, since you're not in the chat, we'll do this how I wanted to do this. If somebody was in the conversation with me, step by step. Ab, do you believe that Allah has known everything since the beginning of time? And this is going to go a little bit slowly, guys, because I got to wait for him to hear. There's going to be a little bit of a delay. Then he has to type his answers. Because when you mention free will, I have to push back on the concept of free will before we can even agree on what the conversation is going to be. So, do you believe, Ab, that that Allah has known all things since the beginning of time? Just simple yes or no. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to... Why? Because this is how we start the conversation. This is how we start the conversation of realizing, because you and I both have different ends of the spectrum of the conversation that we're starting from, right? So what we have to do is find a middle ground of every concept of the conversation, and then we can start building from there. Would you agree with that, Ab? I feel like too many people try to say, this is, too many times in conversations, this is our position, that people start with their position, the other people start with their position. They never discuss what should be the starting position. And then 10 minutes later, after all this debate, they finally say, oh, okay, I understand where you're coming from. And now my position is the same, but I could word it differently. Do you get what I mean by saying that, Ab? Uh, just questions so that we can find a starting point. Do you understand that? Oh, all right. Sorry for that. I grabbed a drink. Yes, you're right. I have to ask to know your position. Okay. Just like you have to ask to know mine. Okay. So if Allah knows all things, right? He knows. Does Allah know? Yeah, dude, Abby, you can join the show. Totally fine. I'll give you your fair amount of say. You can ask pull-ups. I actually have two moderators on my official channel that are Muslim, and both of them have agreed that this is their opinion, not mine. They say that I'm the best um atheist channel of giving people their time to explain, because I speak in a roundabout way a lot of times. So I understand that maybe somebody needs a couple extra minutes to explain themselves, you know. Okay, sorry. But so you agree that Allah knows all things, right? He knows all actions. Okay, that's fine. If that's how you feel, that's fine. You don't feel that you're educated enough. Okay, I understand that. So, does Allah know, Abby? Does Allah know right now all the people who He's going to allow into paradise, and which paradise they're going to be in on the day of resurrection? The ones who have already died, the ones who are living now, and the ones who are going to live in the future. Does Allah already know that? I'm just going to wait for your answer so that we can progress, because this is a big thing about religion, is this concept of free will. Does Allah already know who's going to make it inside of paradise and who is going to hell? Nope, that's not what you see. That's not the way I'm going with it. You see, I've said earlier, I tried to use different angles, right? It's not what's the cause of us living. That's not the angle I'm going with. What I'm going with is, so if Allah knows all the things that I'm gonna do, and He's known it since the beginning of time, and He's known if I'm going to paradise or hell, that makes me eternal, right? All my actions have always been eternal. All my decisions have been eternal, have been since the time of Allah, right? Since the knowledge of Allah. My actions have already been decided, they've been known, and so has my outcome in existence. What does Allah have over me? How is there free will? If everything is already eternalized, essentially, because I can't change anything from Allah's plan, from what He already knows is going to happen. So there is no free will for me. because everything I've already everything that I'm going to decide or already have decided is eternal, according to Islam or even in Christianity, really, because they believe the same thing, that God already knows who's going to go to heaven and who's going to hell. So, um, I'm looking at Islam Q&A fatwa on this. It lines up with what you're saying. I'm not surprised, bro. Are you surprised? Pull-ups. Are you really surprised that what I am saying tends to be in line with the vast majority of Islam? Hello, content over everything. I'm glad you joined us. We're just discussing, I'll talk about any religion, any concept that you want to. Right now, Abdiji and I are discussing something. And, feel free to throw in a question if you want. I'm debating the concept of free will. And content, just so you know, what I just did was talked about how there is this belief, at least between Abdiji, who I'm calling Abby right now. There's this concept in Islam of free will to most people, right? But if Allah and Muslims agree with this, this is not, outside the fold, really. Allah knows everything since the beginning. We can't even conceive the concept of beginning without Allah, right? So Allah knows every decision I'm going to make, every decision I have made, every decision I'm going to make, if I'm going to paradise or if I'm going to hell. So that makes me eternal, right? That makes my whole existence the same as the existence of Allah. The only difference is that Allah says to fear what the judgment will be, right? But he already knows. So the only difference is that I could go my whole life believing that I'm going to hell, but I'm actually going to paradise, right? So that's really the only difference. What is meant by al-Qadar is that Allah has decreed all things from eternity and knows that they will happen at times and that they are known to him in specific ways and way is written. Correct, sir. Actually, I need you to be a moderator. There you go, buddy. Because you're a mod on my other channel, so I just need to go ahead. That he willed it and they decreed according to his decree. So, just Sir McIntosh or pull-ups, content, Abby, what do y'all think about that? I thought of that today about how I am eternal according to Islam and essentially Christianity, right? I may not be God in the sense that I know where I'm going, but for the criteria of eternal, if God already knows my actions, he knows I'm gonna, let's start most basics. He knows I'm gonna exist. He knows my decisions. He knows my actions, right? And then I'm going to live forever in eternity, one way or the other, right? In hell or in paradise. That makes me eternal. The only difference is that God knows the end outcome of it all, right? Allegedly. So that was a unique angle of this I was thinking about on that. So be interested in knowing what y'all think of that. Abby, if you're still here, I thought that would be a unique little concept. Pull-ups, you're like, it's just funny to me. You're looking at Islam Q&A and it lines up with what you're saying. Of course, as Cenk would say, of course. Right? Oh, I also thought of this today. Next time you hear a Muslim say that somebody who's an ex-Muslim was never a Muslim, you have to point out to them that they believe that we're all born Muslim. So that means that every person that isn't Muslim is an ex-Muslim. You can't have it both ways, right? You can't have the belief that we're all born Muslim and that it's our parents that or our society that corrupts us and then say, oh, but you were never a Muslim. That's hypocritical. It's a conundrum. It makes no sense. So that one popped into my head today too. I think I might have heard somebody say that before, but I can't really remember. You know, if people have used that argument, it's definitely not as popular as I think it should be because that's a really good argument. What do you think of the inheritance era in Islam? Do you think is an error or not? Well, technically it is an error. Even grammatically, it's set a way that Muslims try to get out of it. And I've read the apologetics, of course, you know, is that you're supposed to divide it between what is after the male and after the male siblings. But it says in the Quran, it says verbatim what he has left. By he, it is saying the deceased. It's not saying, you know, because if you get something from an inheritance, that's not that you left it, right? That's somebody left it to you. And that's pretty much how it goes. But yeah, it's an error. You know, it adds up past one. That is an error. Allah does not understand fractions, which is not surprising considering that they had no concept of zero. You know, they had no placeholder for zero, which brings up another concept. When the Quran or the Bible or any of them uses hundreds or thousands, how did they do that without the concept of zero? I've always wondered that. Muslims claim that the Sahaba and scholars explained it, and that's why it's not an error. Well, okay, well, I explained it, so it is an error. That simple. You know, and they'll say, oh, you're not a scholar. You're not the Sahaba. Okay, so tell me where in the Quran it says that I have to be a scholar to understand Islam. Actually, inside the Quran, it says that Allah is the one who explains the Quran, not these scholars, not the Sahaba. You know, when you say that you need the Sahaba or the scholars to understand Islam, you're actually saying that Allah was not good enough, did not use his words sufficiently enough to describe the religion that he says your soul depends on, right? You should go to a Muslim who's good at math and show him this, but present it as is from an yeah, like, dude, this proves Zeus because Aristotle wrote it, and Pluto, I mean, and Plato, he wrote it down, so it's proof, right? And then he gives a long speech about how it's wrong. It's like, ha ha, ha 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 ha. That's a funny one. It's a funny one. Pull-ups. Well, I mean, you could also do that. You know, what is it? They tried to get Tommy Robinson. They tried to get people on in the streets of, I think it was like Stockholm or some shit like that, where they would read Bible verses but claim it was from the Quran, and they're like, oh, that's not good. That's horrible. It's immoral. And they're like, oh, that's your Bible. Gotcha. But on Tommy Robinson, what was funny was when he was on live TV and they tried doing it to him, he said, why are you reading me the Old Testament? You know? And then the journalist, I guess you call him a journalist, the news anchor, he says, oh, you heard that one before? He's like, no, I haven't heard it before. I've read it before. You know, like, yeah, there's nowhere in the Quran that it says kill all the livestock and all the women and children and take them as slaves. All that. That's not verbatim the Quran. So if he's a Christian, yeah, almost every Christian knows that God has said killed the livestock too. You know, it's not like totally different. So I don't know, why did Abby stop writing to us? What's so religious? Did you hear about John Allen Cobb, the missionary that got killed for trying to go on that island? Yeah, I heard about him. Fuck him. He's an idiot. It was just stupid. There are, I believe, international laws actually that prohibit people from going there, because the last guy who went there, or one of the islands, there's only a few islands that are essentially untouched by modern times and still live in such ancient ways, but I'm pretty sure it's the same island. There was a guy who went there like in the 30s or 20s or some shit, and he was doing all this weird experiments with them. He would, like, you know, measure their dicks and their height and, like, you know, just, but he gave them diseases and stuff, right? Because they have no immunities. It's similar to the smallpox thing with the Europeans coming to the Western world. They had no concept of it, right? But now we have concept of it, so we try to prevent the spreading of the diseases that would wipe out possibly a whole civilization on an island. But this guy just did not give a fuck, right? Some of these Christians think he's such a brave martyr and whatnot. He was a fool. He could have killed them with, yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. Yeah, I agree with you. And here's the thing. He's setting them up for failure, right? Because if he takes a disease there and they start dying and they don't accept Christ after he's told them, they're fucked for all eternity. At least if they died without the word of Jesus, they have a chance, you know. God will, like, judge them based on their merits in life, and but he shows up. He tells them fucking the gospel. They die within a week and they didn't accept it, and they're going to hell simply because he told them. To me, that's my type of humor. That shit's hilarious. Yeah, Christians in the comments were like, the gospels was spread to all four corners of the earth. Well, good luck with that. I thought, I hate it that they say that it's four corners, because I believe that's a three-dimensional rhombus. That's what I believe the earth is, and nobody can take that away from me. It's a three-dimensional rhombus, which means there's more than four corners. These people are idiots. And I'll never change that, you know? And people ask me all the time, why do you believe the earth's a rhombus? I say, because it's my favorite shape. Poof. The fuck you talking about? It's my favorite shape. That has to be the way that the world is shaped, right? Gosh. Logic. As Cult of Dusty would say. Come on. This isn't hard, okay? This is very simple. The way I want the world to be shaped is the way it is shaped. I don't know. I think I'm thinking Abby left. Abdaji, you know, I don't know. Maybe I brought up a point that he did not want to contend with. Oh, let's see here. Next Tuesday, I can use to invite you there. Okay, cool. Apparently there's like kind of a new channel. It's already got like 500 something people on it. It's squashing my channel after fucking You know, like so much work and dedication. Uh, it's called Dawa Response Team. Uh, what's his name? Rob Speaker wanted to invite me to him or whatever, so I said okay. Why so religious? I'm collecting a list of Quran verses that are very situational. Top of my head, Muhammad vows to his wives. Allah says only vow to him. Muhammad marries his divorced adopted son's wife and then abolishes adoption. Very convenient. Let's see here. Will be another just conventional. Oh, that stops new channel. Okay, cool. Another good one. You cannot marry the prophet's wives after he dies. You have to leave his house. Do not come early. Leave when you are done eating. Get the fuck out. Okay? There's the door. Don't let it hit you where Allah spits you. You know what I'm saying? It's a good way to show any rational person Islam is an all-knowing God. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that's a good way to show it to a rational person, because what you're doing is you're talking about irrationality when you're talking about religion. I mean, yep, okay, maybe it is to a rational person, right? But when you're talking about beliefs don't have to be rational. That's what I was trying to say. Sorry. I got reversed on what I was saying. Another convention, like just convenient, situational. You can marry. I mean, you can have sex with sex slaves, after captives. Very convenient. You know, if you follow hadiths, that one pops up right after a battle. Very convenient. Let's see here. The spoils of war came right when Muhammad was dividing up the spoils of war, and people started fucking complaining. You know, people are like, wait here, dude. Why am I getting this shit? But you're getting all the good shit. And then Muhammad says, well, 1/5 of all the spoils goes to Allah and his messenger. So where does the 1/5 of the spoils of war go now for Muslims? Because Allah's messenger is fucking dead, right? There's a verse where Muhammad tells his followers not to talk in a loud voice. Yeah, you know. There's also a verse that says, don't ask Muhammad, don't ask Muhammad, don't ask the prophet questions that the answers might scare you. And this popped up because people started questioning Muhammad, saying, who's my dad? And then Muhammad would just randomly name some dude, Abdullah Maklahla. And then the guy's real father would stand up and be like, that's not true. That's my son. My wife's never cheated. Muhammad's like, look, don't ask questions you don't want to know the answers to, bruh. Every time in the Quran it says to obey Allah, it says and the messenger. Just so you know that. Yeah, I don't know how many times the number is, but every time it says to obey Allah, it says and his messenger. Just so you know. Muhammad's name actually only appears 4 times in the Quran. But if you read the Quran like I read the Quran, or interpret it how I read it, every time it says Allah and his messenger, all that's saying is the Quran. Because the Quran is the only thing. Oh, you just now got the notification. Hello, mister. That's funny. But Yeah, and when we were talking about spoils of war, I remember I was debating this one Christian and this one Muslim. I can't remember what show it was on, maybe mine or Gin or Tonic or something, maybe Titans TV. But he was talking about how Muhammad was so poor. He said, Yeah, no preemptive dislikes. I'm surprised. I really am surprised. We've actually had a Muslim in here, and you know, he didn't dislike, so that's weird. Uh, claim the messenger means obey his message. Yes, that's yeah, you're absolutely right. Pull-ups, and that's how I would take it. You know, obey Muhammad, obey his messenger, and it doesn't really say in what fields, right? Because if you're supposed to obey Muhammad, think of it as how I said Muhammad is one of the times that Muhammad gets chastised, right, by Allah was because he made vows to his wives. And Allah says, your vows are not to your wives, your vows are uh to Allah. So what if people started following Muhammad right then and there, saying, well, Muhammad made a vow to his wife about something. I'm going to make a vow to my wife about something, right? That would instantly lead them astray, according to Allah's message. Allah would have to come back and pardon them for something that he did not give in the Quran, that they were just following Muhammad's actions because he was Muhammad. That's a totally different action. It's a totally different way of saying it. Yeah, but why say it like that? Just say obey Allah and his message. Subhana Allah. Allah knows best, bro. Why are you asking me? Well, that's the thing. You can't, of course, Muhammad's going to say obey Allah and his messenger. He's not going to say obey Allah and his message, right? But he's going to say his messenger because Muhammad is going to call them to jihad at times, you know? Not every jihad is inside that Muhammad performed is inside the Quran, right? Let's have a feeling now. So and to you, to Kia Watch, I like the guy. He and I disagree on some stuff, but I like him. I think, he and I would make a pretty good show. He I like him. I don't like him a lot, but I like him. What is that? Dumb and Dumber. I like a lot. but, but yeah, of course, of course, he's gonna say, the messenger, right? Because if he said, because the whole point of obeying the messenger is to obey the message. Okay, so it makes me think of how inside the Quran there's a verse that says, if Allah had told you to kill yourselves, you would not do it. So that brings on this whole point of the message and the messenger. If Muhammad told you to kill yourself, what would you say? And a lot of people could argue that Muhammad did entice people to kill themselves. Even there's a hadith about a guy who was with the Sahaba, the companions, and one of the guys told him that Muhammad said, if you die in jihad, then you instantly go to paradise. And this guy asked him in the hadith, he said, is that true? Did you hear that from Muhammad? He said, yeah, I heard that. And the guy just ran into the battle by himself, right? So Allah even says, if I tell you, he was saying to the believers that they have such a lack of faith at times that if he told them to kill themselves, they would not do it, right? But you have Muslims who will go into a battle certainly to die, not to be victorious, right? That's what this hadith proves, is that this guy knew he wasn't going to be victorious, but he ran into it to die, you know, and that gave him paradise. So that should make you question your question about his message and the messenger. Does that make sense? Pull ups? Why I would bring that up? Like I said earlier, you know, you're familiar with my live streams and my work. I'm not very good at times of explaining and expressing live stream was, especially I haven't done this in 2 months really. So, you know, as opposed to when I edit my work, I have time to listen to what I say and then go back over it and change it if need be. But did that kind of get to the point of what you were asking about why not say Allah and his message as opposed to Allah and his messenger? Because only a couple of times in the Quran does Allah actually call for jihad as specific battles. Apparently, Muhammad didn't even appreciate in a lot of this participate. Well, I mean, some sources say that he was in 20 battles, and some sources have it as high as 60. But the difference is that raids are not battles, right? In this nomadic desert dwelling camel jockeying fucking existence, they think raiding on 50 people raiding on 10 fucking merchant traders is the battle, right? They're like, they had swords and camels. That's a battle, bro. That's cavalry. We just attacked that nomadic tribe's cavalry. No, you did not. Sorry about that. I had a package. To me, that's funny though. That concept, like they see Muhammad and 40 of his companions riding around the fucking desert, and they see, you know, a fucking old ass man, like 3 battle aged people, 6 women and a child, and they're like, cavalry. Sound the trumpets. We have found the enemy. Lies. Those were all defensive raids. That's true. That's very true, Mr. Pork. I totally forgot it, man. Thank you for correcting me. Oh man, that's it's also just funny, the concept of thinking of like elephants or camels as cavalry, right? It's just weird. Because we always think like Westerners think of horses as cavalry, but they're like, they have elephants in India and stuff like that. So to me, it's just a weird, funny little thing to think about. But actually, pull-ups, if you want, just save that hadith and we'll bring it up the very beginning of next show. Because I'm going to go ahead and pop off here. My wife has given me a list of chores, and if I don't do it, I will hear this Asian woman in her accent, what the motherfucker? What the motherfucker? I told you to do something you never do. Never do. So I really don't want to hear that Asian accent going off like that. My wife, and it's funny, the shit she'll say, you know, like I said, and I'm not joking. Instead of saying motherfucker, she'll say, what the motherfucker? What the motherfucker, man? Instead of oh shit, she'll say, oh the shit. Oh the shit. So I'd rather go ahead, do some chores. Then tonight, I don't have to hear that. Oh, what the motherfucker, man. What the motherfucker. But that's just me being racist because, you know, I'm a racist man who married a Chinese woman. It's just how I am. You know how it is. Oh, yeah. Definitely email it to me. I forgot that you have my email. And all the conventional or situational verses, go ahead and send those too, dude. We'll talk about that on a live stream too. That's totally fine with me. Or if you want, I'll try to make a video for it. I'll send it to you first. You can look over it and then see if that's what you want. Yeah, covering my tracks. Yeah. Very smart. Yeah. I can't be racist towards Chinese people. I'm married to one. Yeah, but she's racist to Japanese people. So there you go, bro. You can't get around it. It's full circle. I understand it. All right, everybody. All right, mister. You came in late, I think. So when this is done, wait a few minutes and it will be posted up, and start from the beginning and see what you like. What's the religious? Yeah, I want to get my information out there for Muslims, but I live in a house surrounded by Muslims. Yeah, good luck with that shit, bro. You're living in a house with Muslims. Congratulations. Like you and Abu Lolo, man. I feel bad for y'all guys. All right. We'll see y'all here next time. I appreciate you watching. Think of questions, think of topics, and we'll bring it up as soon as we get back here next time. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. Definitely within the next 2 days, I'll do at least an hour stream because I do have double shifts for the next 2 days. So it'd just be like a short little hour stream. All right. Y'all be safe.